Lenerd Louw, good morning.
Good morning, Sham.
So beautiful to share this beautiful sunrise with you.
Oh, it's so amazing to be here, man. And wow, good God, look at that.
I know,
Stunning.
it's stunning. It's stunning. So, Lenerd Louw, ex-CEO of Frank.net, author of the book Jump. Welcome to our first podcast and in our series, in our leadership series. Today we're going to be talking about your journey, leadership in business, personal leadership, and then how your life journey has enabled you to gain certain insights that could enhance other people's leadership journey in business and in life. Connection to self is where we'll start. Who are you? Who is Lenerd Louw? Not the title,
Yeah, yeah,
but who is Lenerd Louw? Not the CEO,
yeah, yeah.
not all of those labels. How do you describe who you are?
Wow. I think I'm on an ongoing journey, and that's changing day by day. So, 7, 8 years ago, very much in that title and in that role, um, and I defined myself then very much by the title and what I did. And now, for me, it's really more inner journey, and I'm astonished and surprised every day by by the new developments and the changes, as it moves. So, yeah. I can't even answer that question, Sham.
So, would you describe yourself then as a journeyman, as someone who is in a state of continuous new growth?
Exactly, it's like it's changing continuously. What I am now, as opposed to even a few months ago, I feel so different.
Yeah.
And it is continuously changing and growing and expanding. And I think if you start the inner journey, and I've always probably been on inner journey, but I very much kick-started 7, 8 years ago, a deeper inner journey. And after I started that, it really became almost not defining myself, if that makes any sense. So I find it almost difficult to say, okay, to define it, because it's moving and changing, and there's so many different aspects and nuances of myself. If you ask me in a specific role, let's say in a business role or in a spiritual role, maybe I can expand a bit, stuff I'm doing currently and so on. But I think the journey and the beauty of it is that once you start the journey inside, it's just an ongoing process of unfolding and layers that you're dropping and getting to
It
your
almost
core.
sounds too narrow to define who you are, as what you're saying. So,
Yeah.
I guess one of the things we can say is that you're now more who you truly are than you were before.
Yeah, I think I think we come to this world, and then as we grow up, there's so many layers that are that are put on us and that we put on ourselves, and then at a point I think we start uncovering those layers, and the layers come off and we go deeper into our core and into who we am. And I suppose if you really get into the consciousness of things. I find going into your core, you're going into this more and more, going into this one's consciousness. So, oh wow, man, this is going to be a very wild answer to that, but I suppose I'm starting to find more and more I'm God. And that God is inside me, and not necessarily in a narrow religion kind of way, or not at all in a narrow religion way, not in any type of religion. Just this beauty of this consciousness inside us, and I'm starting to drop more and more into that, and that's almost undefinable, but it is just like a beautiful, beautiful essence, and like this consciousness of love. I hope it's not too hell of a deep kind of
No,
answer
not
to
at
you.
all. I know I hit you with boom, with the biggest question straight away, and it's usually
Yeah.
something you need to get into. But I think I'm hoping this beautiful sunrise gets us to real talk straight away.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad you mentioned, because many of us don't dare to mention the word, I am God.
Yes.
I think for many it would be easier to think that if you are of God and you are a part of Him, then clearly you are also God, especially when you're getting closer to living in alignment. And
Yeah.
what are the aspects, for instance, of God that you see within yourself?
I think the first thing is love. And that's just the strong core of love, love for myself, love for, the God within. And wow, I didn't see this conversation going straight into God and I am God. And you're so right, Sham. Sometimes we are scared to say that because people, might take it the wrong way. If you say, "Who are you?" and I say, "I'm God," it's gonna it's a wild answer. But I think we're all God. I think there's plants behind us, the beautiful sunset there, those mountains, the water. It's all this one beautiful consciousness. And and so to get back to your question, love. I think that's just a big part. If I drop into my inner being. And I drop into everything around me. Look at those mountains. Look at those trees there. And I mean, even look at the house. That's also God. Everything's got a consciousness. Everything's got a vibration, and it's all part of nature, of the universe. It's just a beautiful essence to it. And the essence, the best way I can describe that essence is just love.
Yeah. Well, there you go. There's the answer.
As the deeper journey continued, and as I went into different experiences and different workshops and different, rituals, initiations, it just brought me deep within, and it was always, I think, then as they say, you respond or react, and I started finding that the more I responded rather than reacted, the deeper and the more meaningful the journey became, So it wasn't just like a instant reaction on something, which often also happens, and I catch myself, but also like responding, really letting it sink in, what's happening, and then see what is my story in that, and not to respond from my story, but to really feel it in my body, what's happening, and then to move forward from that with the response from there. And there I believe it's mainly two things. We can either do it from love, or we can do it from fear and anxiety and insecurity. So every time I had challenging interactions and challenging learnings, it often brought those up, and it often still every day my daily encounters with people, stuff, myself. It often comes to that. How am I going to act? What am I going to do? Decisions. Does this come from a place of love? Does it come from a place from some inner insecurity or fear? So that was one of the things that I think that probably accelerated the journey.
Can you go back to the origin story of the moment that formed you, that got you on the journey, that defining period?
Oh yeah, and I actually explain it in quite vivid and agonizing detail in my book, and that was around about end of 2012 actually, end of 2012. It's funny enough to say around about December 2012. This whole Mayan calendar thing is something really interesting there. That's December 2012. But yeah, I was living on Clifton Beach and very much living the life, CEO of a company, and at that point, a single boy, and probably also quite a single naughty boy, and I actually started getting this inner call, to do something different with my life, and I didn't make a lot of sense, so I distracted myself from that, from that with really working hard and also partying hard. And from the outside, this picture was all beautiful and glamorous, living on this one of the best spots in the world, I would think, that spot there. And then one day I was, just walking on, and this is after about 2, 3, 4 years of distracting myself from the inner call that said that something different.
What is that inner call? How would you describe it? Is that intuition? Is it guilt? It was almost neither, Sham. It was just this feeling that I should be doing something. So I would walk into the office, and it started with just myself, headhunted to start this business or approached to start this business, and it ended up with like 400 people, by after the 3-4 years. And I would just walk into this business, and there were like 400 people there, and it was quite a funky, business, very much. It was quite innovative, right? It was the first direct.
It was the second. The one before was One Life Direct that I started and launched. That was the first direct life insurance business in South Africa, and I had a lot of fun with that. That was an amazing business. Got it out, and it's a hugely successful business now. And then after that, I got approached to start the business, but very soon after starting that, and I just felt I should be doing something different, and. Thank you. And that was really, really insane in a way. So I would walk onto the floor and, open plan sales floor. I often walked on the floor, very much talking about leadership style, very much on the floor, talking to the young sales guys on the floor. They loved me, I loved them. It was like a beautiful vibe in this office. So the people part I enjoyed, but I walked in and I often would think, no, I shouldn't be doing this. This was great. I had a lot of fun starting businesses, but I should be doing something different. It was just like a clear voice saying you should be doing something different every time I walk into the office. You can imagine how pretty crazy that is. You arrive there in the morning and you build this thing and you have this clear realization you shouldn't be here anymore. It was all cool what I've done up until then, but it was almost like this realization, you maybe call it intuition, this just thought that I should be doing something different. And that was quite confusing because, the question is then, okay, but what? And I was like, but this is what I've been building my whole life, doing my whole life, And that I tried to distract myself from that voice.
One would say, if you're not aligned, if you're not happy, then how successful a leader are you going to be? But for all intents and purposes, you were a successful leader.
And especially in the previous business, the One Life Direct business, very much so. In the follow-up business, yes, we started a great business, great vibe, great culture. But Sham, the moment you walk into an office and you walk into a space and you feel you shouldn't be there, I think it affects the business and it affects your leadership also. So I'll be quite vulnerable to say that I think in that last business I probably wasn't a great leader anymore. Because I felt I should be doing something different. The guys still loved the place. They still loved me, but my heart wasn't in it anymore, brother.
And that came out in terms of how it affected your leadership, but also the distractions that started to manifest in your life as a way of not.
That's exactly it,
addressing the truth of your feeling or living in alignment with what your feeling is telling you.
That's exactly, But I think that's it. I think it became less important to me, and I was also getting pretty bored with it, I've been in direct businesses for many years. We were in the novelty in the start of it in the 90s, early 90s, when everyone thought these things won't work in financial services, and we proved them all wrong, and that was exciting, man. It was exciting to be in that space. And then with one, that's in the short-term insurance, car insurance space. And then with the One Life Direct 2006, and so that was very much also, taking life insurance direct. Everyone around, not just in South Africa, around the world said, no, you can't do that. So that was really fascinating, exciting. It was great, But then a few years later, starting the ladder business, everyone was jumping on the direct part, So everyone was. And they were also not doing it necessarily in a cool way, we're just cold calling people from all over the place. So And we never did that. We put adverts out and people would call us, it was a total different approach. It was not so intrusive. So I started not enjoying that anymore, and I also was quite bored with, I'm a builder, I'm a creator, but when things are already running, I'm not a maintenance guy in a way also, and especially, and I'm a disruptor, so I got quite bored with what I was doing. So my why changed, but I think it was also a deeper, bigger inner shift that my soul was ready for.
To go back to Clifton.
Yeah. Let's get to that rock bottom
Not a bad place to have a dark night of the soul, right?
Yeah, Sham, most people are going to go, what the hell? I mean, you had a dark night of the soul on Clifton Beach, I was like 1 hour away from the beach, beautiful view. In the front was the Atlantic Ocean and the bay, and there was no wind in Clifton. The wind blow in Cape Town, but it never blows in Clifton, man, because Lion's Head splits the wind, and if I look back from the pad I was, and I would see Lion's Head, and further back Table Mountain, and then in the front the whole Atlantic Ocean. I mean, there was a deck there and a swimming pool and a jacuzzi on the side, and so a lot of people may say, "Wow, that's
terrible."
That's how can you say you had this thing? But that is exactly the message. It's not about what's the outer; it's what's the inner. You can be in any most beautiful place in the world. If the inner isn't okay, and then it doesn't matter what the outer is.
Yeah.
So this inner shift happened, and I distracted myself for a few years with that.
But this
and then this Clifton walk happened,
So I'm really kidding. I'm sorry that we're slowing down that process, but
great.
From a leadership perspective, everything seems to be going right. Then there starts to be misalignment, and now the focus is not the organization, not the leadership of the organization, but personal leadership.
Exactly. Okay, I went like, no, God, you have to look after yourself. You have to go into your own personal leadership, as you call it. And that's when it started becoming more clear and clear, that there should be this change. And that accumulated one day, over a weekend, I think a Saturday morning, and I got up and I went for a walk on the beach, and the setting there, it's beautiful white sand, and it's like almost a azure blue sea, beautiful sea and sky, and flecks of cloud in the sky, and Table Mountain on the other side, towering up high above, and I walked for 5 minutes, Sham, and I was pretty bored, man. I was walking here, and all those things I described now, I didn't see. I saw it, but I didn't see the beauty of it. It was 5 minutes. I walked. I said, "No, I think I'm just going to do something." And it was 5 minutes on the beach, and I just got bored with it. And I looked around and I thought, but I always loved nature. I've always been connected with nature. I could go for walks in nature for hours. I love nature. I love being in the mountains. I love being in the ocean and being in the sea, and then, so that's always been me, and I was small, and my dad would stop the car, we'd like traveling, somewhere. I would always be in the bushes in the forest, and then I'd carry on driving, and after the halfway stop, they would have to look for me. I'm in the bushes, I'm a child of nature.
So this was a big thing now, that you suddenly were not seeing nature.
Yes, exactly. Coming from that, being so connected to nature, and then all of a sudden walking on this beach and then feeling, fuck, I don't see the beauty. And when I realized that same time that I'm bored and I don't see the beauty, I also realized that it is beautiful, but I can't see it. So anyone else walking here, or most people walking here, will see this beauty and will be so privileged and so happy to be in this space. And I wasn't. I was feeling pretty unhappy, and I was like, I can't see it. So I took the steps up home, went home, called some people, and had a hell of a party, so to make myself feel better. But that moment of stayed, that rock bottom Clifton walk stayed. The next morning I woke up and I knew, almost getting emotional, I knew things would never be the same again, I just realized that I had to reach rock bottom, if I couldn't see, I suppose, the beauty and God all around us, to come back to where we started. I couldn't see God anymore. I couldn't see God in the beautiful nature and trees and water and mountain around me. And then I knew, I need to change. I need to move and change everything in my life. And that had to start with the workspace. So, it was only like a few months after. Then I started putting the things in place to leave. And it was only 6, 7, 8 months later I left. And then with that, a lot of other changes also, clearing a lot of other stuff out also, changing. The voice was also very clear, it was when I asked what I should be doing, it said, clear out all of the old to make place for the new.
There was a voice?
It was almost what started happening, that intuition, that feeling, when I'm walking onto the sales floor and onto the company that I shouldn't be here. I distracted for a long time, but at this point I started asking then when I realized this rock bottom Clifton walk, and I went, okay, I need to go,
Yeah.
I need to change things in my life, and everything really, I basically asked myself, the message was quite clear, you should be doing something else with your life, and then I didn't even ask the question. As I said, for 3-4 years I distracted myself, but eventually then I went, okay, let me listen, and then I asked the question back, so what should I be doing then, and if I say, and then it was just silence, there was no realization there, and I went, okay, and then that took a few days, no answer, and then I changed the question slightly, and I went, so what should I do to find out what I should be doing? And it's amazing, then the answer was, and if I say voice, it's not like this person speaking in my head.
It's like a feeling.
It's like a feeling. It's like a realization. It's almost like a boom, a knowing. I get these knowings. So even in business, intuition, I get knowings. Some people hear voices. Some people have sensations in their body. Some people just have knowing. Osho wrote an amazing book about intuition. And I had big intuition in business. I would always know which adverts work. So I always had a big knowing.
So people in knowing has always been a red line.
Sure.
Those moments of knowing, so just before we carry on with the story, how does that happen? Is that you quiet in your mind, or is it something that hits you like a light bolt? Like, how does that happen?
It's like, it's almost an immediate dropping in. To use this example, so when I asked that question, what should I be doing to find out what I should be doing with my life? It was an immediate knowing of, clear out all of the old for the new to come in. And that was just it was immediate dropping in. It's like, you could probably say your bolt of lightning is probably, that's probably close to it. But it's almost like in a quiet way, it's not this loud screaming. It was just like this quiet knowing, clear out all of the old. It was like this voice kind of knowing of clear out the old. It was just this realization. The same way, as business, the guys would put 3-4 adverts in front of me, and I would just go and I would, that advert is going to work. And we often tested, adverts and see which work, and I was like almost always right, So I did all the studies.
And that knowing, it sounds like it's not a visceral feeling, because when people talk about feeling, we always talk about gut feeling, I think in general, not just in business. But you're describing something slightly different.
Yes, it's almost it's a realization. It's almost like a download. It's almost like I would just know. I would look at that advert and I just knew that advert was going to work. Osho wrote the Indian mystic.
Yes.
It's amazing. I'm sure you know him. Amazing stuff he's brought into the world, and he's got some beautiful teachings on intuition. And he's got a book. Well, he didn't write the book. He never wrote a book. He was always just discourses, and people put it in a book.
Yeah.
And this book about intuition, amazing book. And he described there the 3-4 different ways of intuition and how it comes to you. And as I say, some people get pictures, some people get like feelings or goosebumps in their body, and some people have just a knowing. So I fall in that category, and it's just a knowing. It's just like a realization, a download that you get. It's the best way I can describe it.
So we're still in the question, what formed you? So we spoke about this low point, and then a knowing.
Yeah.
But very often, unfortunately, and for many people, again, when we talk about leadership, we don't always do what we know.
Sure.
And you talk about the word jump. Tell us about the transition from knowing into jumping.
Yeah. Yeah, that knowing kicked in, and then I think the jump was quite quick after that. It was really just getting some practical stuff sorted, and exiting the business in like an orderly way, for the business and for the people, then it was I was going out with a wonderful woman at that point for almost a year. It was also jumping out of the relationship because I knew I had to clear out all of the old, and it was also jumping out of Cape Town and jumping out of South Africa and jumping out of everything I knew. So I exited the business. The end of the relationship came together with leaving the country and going on this journey around the world. I mean, she was amazing. She actually dropped me even off the airport. It was quite a sad space. But we just knew, from our spiritual growth, and I still got a lot of love in my heart for her. And she's married now and beautiful children, and that's makes my heart so happy. But I knew I had to, and she also knew, and she was very supportive in that way. I knew I had to jump out of that also, and I also knew sitting in Cape Town and just I had to really get myself out of the comfort zone. I really had to put myself into something totally different, and just take myself totally out of and that ended up being South America, which is also jumping out of the comfort zone of a language. Arriving there, and I mean, I don't know, South America, we're so used to English as a world language. South America hasn't, they haven't heard about that yet. It's Spanish there, man, and English don't take you any far. So, so it was jumping out of all of it, jumping out of the comfort zone, getting on a plane and landing 2 a.m. in Lima, Peru, and with almost nothing, and also almost selling almost everything I had, or giving it away, and just starting something totally different.
And so I think people will enjoy to actually read the book and go step by step on the journey with you. So, without describing it, after jumping, the journey started to form you.
Yeah.
And as you described earlier, it started to form you by continuously presenting you with opportunities to either react to what was unfolding in the journey from love or from fear.
Yeah.
Now that you've come back from this journey, which was it 5 years?
It's about 5 years. 5 years around the world, and
how many countries?
35 countries.
Wow.
5 continents.
Amazing. And if we now look at, we covered who you are, what formed you. Now that you're back, my question to you is, what will form you moving forward? What will you do with all of these life lessons? How will you live your life moving forward?
What I'm doing right now is sharing my experiences. That's the first thing that comes up on when you ask that question, Sham, is that sharing my experiences with other people. And what I find is, as I share my experiences, it forms me even more. So I'm sharing my learnings, and I stay far away from the word teaching. I'm no teacher in any way. So I do workshops and facilitate stuff, and both online, both in person. Guiding, mentoring, coaching, whatever you call it. But it doesn't come from a teaching place. So Because I think if you teach, then you almost take the power away from the person, and you're there, and you teach them, and they can also relax because now this teacher is telling them stuff. So I don't like that model. I like really where I share my experiences and the person stay in their power, and I'm just sharing, and they can take and use what resonate and what is their truth.
So
the more I share my stuff, the more I get formed, because it's a two-way process. I share my experiences with people, what other people would call teach, and I get so much more sharing or teaching back. You know what I mean?
That's interesting.
And I've always found it, in business. I was in my late 20s in the UK when we started a business there, and I was already training branch managers I was an operational side of the business, and at a very young age, and they were like, guys in the business I was training, and they were like, wow, Len, so thank you for all this training. I said, guys, you don't understand. I'm learning more from you than you're learning from me. And that was even in business. I've always had that experience that I learn as much from the people that I'm training, teaching, whatever you're going to call it, than they from me. And I'm finding it the same. Nothing has changed. I get so much back, and it forms me back in such a big way.
So I wanted to ask you about that in terms of, so I know that the life lessons that you're applying in a much broader sense than in business right now.
Sure.
And I'm not sure how many times you've actually had this question in the more recent past, but how would you apply the lessons that have formed you if you were to go back to business, or for people who are in business? What can you share?
Wow. Yeah, that's a good one. I think the first thing is to operate from your heart, man. You can't do anything if it's not from your heart. And that includes business. And business is actually extremely spiritual. On this journey, I came obviously on across so many spiritual people, and I stayed in communities and hanged with hippies and whatever you want to call it, and a lot of spiritual people. And some people that I found is like, oh yeah, business is like, you almost get sometimes I get the money thing is bad or business thing is bad, and and often it's also just because some of the spiritual people are also not fully integrated. They still got a lot of work to do. And I often say to them, and I often had even a bigger realization, on this journey of mine, that business is extremely spiritual and companies are extremely spiritual. You create this entity. Now you can create this entity with different energies, and if you create this energy with love, and you create it from the heart space, it's going to be a total different entity as when you create it with, let's say, exploitation in mind. So the stuff that business will bring to the world will be vastly different depending on what energy it's built from, and the energy that it comes from is what it will be. If you build it from the heart and from love, it's going to be a heart-love business. It can't be anything else. And if you build it with, you want to exploit people, that's what the energy will be. You can't change it afterwards. It is that, and that's what it will bring into the world also. And what is, I think, so fascinating is that even though the second business that I mentioned, if you bring it from the exploitation, it won't nearly be as successful as the business from heart and from love. So there's so many reasons to do that. Is that it will just be much more successful. If you don't want to do it for just from the heart or love space, you just want to do it for results. That's also okay, But you'll find that it is going to be a much more successful business.
Yeah.
And the people on
and the journey is going to be much more enjoyable.
And the journey, exactly. The people in the business are going to love it. So they're going to love it, and so therefore they don't want to leave you, man. So you have less recruitment cost. If you build this like business that comes from another energy, the people want to leave the whole time, and you have to re-employ new people.
It's a lot harder.
It's much harder. It's going to cost you. You're going to look at the bottom line. It's going to kill the business eventually.
It's not going to go further. It's going to be harder along the way. So I think that is just a beautiful place to leave it, because that's such a strong point of a journey that started in business, that you went around the world for 5 years on this epic journey, not related to business, and now you're practicing outside of business and sharing your knowledge outside of business. But you've left us with something beautiful, profound, deeply personal, that those of us who are in business can be inspired by the fact that if you have a heart-centered business, there's so much more that you could achieve with that. Len, I have to thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing this time. It's lovely to see you again, and just so keen to keep following your journey.
Oh, thank you, Sham. It's so beautiful. Thank you for the chat, and thank you for this beautiful setting that we did it in. It's what a beautiful start of the day. Thanks, brother.
Cheers, Len.
Love you, man.
Love you, boy.